Welcome to the Sigma Empath Podcast. In this edition, we are talking about energy. We are talking about the journey of an empowered neurodivergent woman. We are talking about the pros and cons of being neurodivergent, what it actually means to be neurodivergent, in particular ADHD, people on the autism spectrum. And of course, there's going to be a mention of the narcissist. My guest today is a highly accomplished woman who has navigated the journey from complete self-doubt to complete empowerment. She is here to inspire with her story and her journey. Please welcome my next guest. Welcome to the show. Tell us very quickly, who are you, what's your name, and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Dr. Dawn Roller, and I work in a few different companies. I also am an author, and I really look into brain studies right now is what I'm writing about, and really mental health, different things like that. And we'll get into that further later.
Yes, I'd love to dive further into that. You have a lot of abbreviations, acronyms after your name. PhD, DM org, DMin. Break down some of your credentials. It's quite impressive.
I definitely will. Let me set the stage for just a minute. When I was in high school, what seemed like a tragedy, my parents moved me 3 times in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in the U.S. education system. I thought it was a curse. It was actually a blessing because it made me into a serial learner at 34. I can turn on a dime and I look at different things. Like when you say neurodivergent, I look at things, everything I look at has 20 questions, where most people look at it linear or look at it parallel. I look at it, okay, what is it? How does it work? Why does it work? And that's what led me to being a serial learner at 34, which led me into 4 terminal degrees, 2 masters, 3 bachelors, and over 87 certificates that have merit.
Wow, that's really quite impressive. I want to go a little bit deeper down the path you just opened about you've expressed the logical motivation, what drives you. But I want
Yeah.
to understand on a really personal, intimate level, we're all driven by something. If you subscribe, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Sigmund Freud's pain pleasure principle, we either run away from pain or we run towards pleasure. For you internally, and I will insert myself a little bit into that conversation, my drive for success and achievement was to fill the void of my childhood. I wanted to feel
Yeah.
accepted and this and that. What drives you? What are you compensating? What void are you filling? What are you trying to tell yourself?
Absolutely. I think it's really innate. With me, it just happens. It's not something that I drive for or something that I look for. It just happens internally. My brain does not shut off unless I make it shut off. I actually schedule my sleep and actually put down what time I'm going to sleep, which time I'm waking up, because I don't do it naturally. I have to schedule things. I have to work with how my brain works. And so if you look at the word innate, it means, and I'll look up the definition right here, it's an ability that is present in a person or animal from birth. And so I think a lot of mine is from birth, and a high achiever is really defined as an individual who consistently or significantly goes after something.
Yeah.
So when I was 5 years old, my dad took me to the test department. When my sisters went to the store with my mother or went shopping or creating things that women do, I was in the test department of a very large company learning how engines ran that ran planes. I loved the hydros. I loved how it worked. I loved what it did, the compulsors. And I think that's where my drive started. Like you said, you started from an early child trying to fill those voids. I think with me, there was always a pressure to be better than anyone else, work harder than everyone else. When people would go home from a job, I'd work 2 or 3 more hours, or I'd start at 5 a.m. because I got really excited when I was far ahead when the rest of the world woke up. So it's
Yeah.
almost innate to where for the first 30, 40 years of my life, I didn't work with my body. I was so frustrated with my body. I tried to make it do things that it wasn't ready to do or it didn't do. Now with my scheduling system and really looking at how my body works and how my mind works, it really helps me to really store that intense energy into
Yeah.
things with longevity. Instead of, I used to put it into small things that would end, but now I use that for longevity. And where will it go? How will it go? And why will I use it?
Wow. So you've obviously gone through this journey of self-discovery.
Mhm.
Self-awareness is one of the most empowering aspects of the human experience. Through awareness, we can grow, we can achieve, we can learn, we can stretch. At about what age did you start to become self-aware of who you are maybe self-aware of, is there a sense of purpose of who I am? Bring us into that world, if you will.
When I studied holistic medicine for 6 years, it really talked of a secular system. So I'd say at 5 in the test department was a big land thing for me. And then at 10, 12 years of age, I did a lot of sports. I was in a color guard that practiced 5 days a week, had performances on Saturday, which really for 9 years taught me to be where I had to be and have the discipline I needed to have. And then through high school, I never really believed in higher education. And being a dean of education, you're like, wait a minute, you were on that
That doesn't
planet.
add up. That
Yeah, it
doesn't
doesn't
make
add up. Well,
sense.
hey, we'll have to ask D why he hired me, and you know D. But
Yes.
but anyway,
Love him dearly.
I didn't really believe in it until I had opened enough companies and worked towards it. And then I was like, wait a minute, if I work for the university, my education's free. So that enlightenment came right around the age of 34. And then from 34 to 54, again, in that circular, your body's going to keep bringing you back to what your purpose is. And it's going to keep driving you back to something that you may have left or gone off track. And so I believe it brought me back after being a dean at a university for years and rising to the top of education and corporations to, wait a minute, Dawn, who is Dawn and what am I here for? And that second enlightening opening happened around 42, 44 when I started to look at aircrafts. And, I flew a lot commercial, but I, took the test drive to fly on my own, stuff like that, you're like, maybe I could do that, but a lot of people and a lot of humans hold themselves back. Like you
Yes.
said, that's either a childhood or it's something that you're going back to say, can I do that or can I not do that? And I just took those barriers off. And once I did that in my 40s, I was more free and I could create what I needed to create instead of what the world was telling me that I should create or I should
Yeah.
go this direction or that direction. And that's how I became a dean, was 17 jobs over 18 years in an education facility where I kept trying to make it better.
So a couple of questions. You've mentioned the word body. I'm assuming you mean the physicality of our experience, right? So I
Yes,
was in
sir.
Cirque du Soleil. Our physicality is a huge component of who we are. Is there a direct correlation between physicality, physical wellness, physical musculature, physical prowess, all of those things that embodies the body, and intellect and spiritual growth? What's the correlation? Because obviously for you, there's a direct link.
It is. And I think it's on the plane. A lot of the things, and take it from a woman in her 50s who tried to lose weight for many decades and ended up down and up and down and up and down and up. But once you realize that it's a mental game, you are able to put your
Oh,
brain and that mind in alignment with your body. Listen to your body, eat what your body needs, do what your body needs it to do, stretch. People don't think about stretching as working out. They think they've got to go somewhere for 30 minutes or an hour and
yeah,
really work out their body when it's your mind that's controlling what your body says it can and cannot do.
yeah.
And that barrier between your mind and what you think you can and cannot do works on your body, it works on your job, it works in your relationships. All of that is telling you what the ceiling is or what the where the level is that you have to stop.
Yeah.
Most people get just about to happiness and then they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. I'm outside of my comfort zone. Which, I mean, as you know, after the comfort zone comes the learning zone and then it comes the free zone. There's so many zones above that, but most
Yeah,
humans will stay right inside that box.
that's right. And oftentimes they go from being within the comfort zone, the box, and they go into what's called the panic zone where they're trying to do too much, push themselves too far. And then it has the reverse effect. They freeze, they go into the fight, flight, freeze, or
Yeah,
fawn mode because they're stretching too
exactly.
far. And again, it's all based through awareness.
Yeah, they always say with a gym, don't join on January 1st, join on
Yes.
February 8th, because that's when everyone has already given up.
Yes, that's right. I read a meme once that said, I'm going to open a gym in on January 1st, and January 15th, I'm going to turn it into a bar.
Yeah,
And I have the
exactly.
same clientele.
You
It's
service everybody.
so I'm fascinated with people who think differently. We can put that under the umbrella of neurodivergence.
Yeah.
Neurodivergence has this very wide scope. It encompasses a lot of things. Through our conversations, I've learned that you fall under the category what was once upon a time called Asperger's.
Hmm.
And off camera, we briefly talked about it was, I think, in 2013 that
Yeah.
it was reclassified. Can you break down a little bit of the history behind Asperger's and what are the symptoms? What are the
Right.
characteristics?
And I do, with something like Asperger's, we really looked at it as a disability. So it was discovered in 1986, where they started looking at the Hans-Asperger's scale, and they started looking at children that had ADHD diagnosis to say, is this child on the spectrum or are they not on the spectrum? And my son, he was 5 at the time. They said he was on the scale and he was a 99.8% sure on Asperger's. And so when we gave him the ADHD medicine, it actually wasn't working because he was Asperger's. He was not ADHD. And so when I was talking to a psychiatrist, we kind of found this by mistake. My dad, she was asking about my parents who had passed away. And my dad, when he visited me in Missouri, he put on every single electric device, lamps, light switches, refrigerator, how much it took per minute, per hour, per day to run, and how much it was costing me on my electric bill. And so she said, wasn't that odd? And I said, no, that was my dad. My dad was a mechanical and electrical engineer. When you're taught about him from the age of 5, I never found any oddities. It was just
Yeah.
the way the brain worked. And then my brain worked that way, and so did my son's. So after my son took it, I did the Gilliam-Asperger scale, and I was a 98.7. So
Wow.
that's really on your high dominance. The second thing I went to was the Asperger Guide for Employees. So they have a guide on how to work with employees, and many famous names are in there on how their brains worked a little bit differently. And so the person that actually took the Asperger's to the next level in 1981, British psychiatrist Lorna Wing, she published a seminar on the
Yeah.
findings from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And what they did was they went ahead and said it was first known as ICD-10 for Asperger's on the International Classification of Diseases in 1993, and the second DSM-IV and Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders in 1994. So anyone born before 1993 lacked the diagnosis with symptoms. So we all have those people, which they're my favorite people. The weird people are my jam. Like I will find them on planes, on trains, when I work. I just try to find brilliance, and where I can't find it, I'm like, don't call me, I'll call you,
Yeah.
don't I know
And
who
I
I'll talk to again because I love the difference of that.
and I
I
love
love
your
that.
diversity of vocabulary. You go from this in-depth analytical medical analysis of a condition to my jam.
Yeah,
And I think that's a part of the beauty of people with some level of neurodivergence is that we can
right.
live in multiple worlds because we can think we don't suffer from cognitive dissonance and things like that. I just want to share
Yeah,
some research that I did.
I
It is
love that.
estimated that 0.5% of the global population may have had characteristics that would have previously been diagnosed as Asperger's that are now put under the
Right.
category of autism spectrum disorder, ASD.
Yeah.
Around 2.2% of all American adults have autism spectrum disorder. This blows my
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah.
2.2%. And here's the thing that I don't know if this is accurate, and you can maybe guide me in a better direction. Autism rates are usually calculated based on children, with most diagnoses being given to children. So does that mean we're not diagnosing adults?
Right. Usually, as an adult, they never go back to find that. Like when I asked to do the Gilliam Asperger scale, the psychiatrist, Mrs. Smith, who's fabulous here in Missouri, she said, no, it's not designed for adults. And I said, but I want to take it. So I actually bought the rights to the assessment so I could take it myself and use it in my own practice.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to go ahead and find it. So I just want to say just one more thing. When you said in layman's terms, if anyone listening doesn't really know how this works, or they may not know someone with Asperger's, let me just kind of talk about a jet plane when we get
Yes,
on. Like if
please.
you got on a jet plane, you'd say, okay, where am I going? What time will I arrive? Do I have all my stuff in my suitcase? Things like that. A person with Asperger's actually, like, I get on a plane and I'm like, did Boeing or who made these seats? Who made the bolts? Are our wings on like steadily? Did they do all the safety checks? An Asperger's mind will actually go through those type of things. Who made the seats? Is the pilot awake? Did the pilot fly for too many hours? Did they do, like I said, where are we going? When are we going to get there? How many other people are on this plane? So the questions just keep going and going and going. And I mean, the biggest one that I always joke with people is, why do we have a life jacket with that tiny little river down that and we do not have a parachute?
I asked that
Give
question.
me a parachute. Yeah,
I asked that question. Does that mean that I have ADHD then? or
it
autism?
does. I mean, it's the way, what I really realized is in my 20s and 30s, what drove people nuts about me, actually with the right details and the right questions, opens up a world that most people never get to, because we do think differently. And that's why I love terminal degrees so much. In my master's programs, they always told me the right and the wrong answer. In terminal degrees, you set up your own theory. You
Oh,
learn the curriculum, but when you do the test and you create new bounds, whether you do like a quantitative or a qualitative study. And that was very fun for me, to where most people die through a PhD. I actually loved it in communication because I could make tons of communication models that I could patent.
I love that concept of education, by the way. I wish that all education was more of a non-linear, non-rigid,
I do
follow
too.
the establishment and think freely. I'm all about
I do
creativity and
too.
thinking freely. So I'm glad you had that experience. I want to
Yeah,
go
I do
a little
too.
bit deeper
Me too.
into something you touched on, the challenges.
Hmm.
You're neurodivergent. You've obviously made it your ally in some
Yeah,
capacity, but you did mention that it can create friction. You can be misunderstood.
yeah.
You can be viewed as either a threat or a rebel. How are you, how have you navigated both embracing the challenge, but also the
Hmm.
beautiful, empowering aspect of this neurodivergent way of thinking, of being?
It was, yeah, it really was a collision of my holistic medicine and I don't really know if we can say this, but not giving a damn. I really cared
Is
what
that a technical,
everyone,
is that an
yes,
official technical
exactly.
term? Yeah.
I really focused for 45 years on what people thought about me and how they thought about me. And it broke my heart. If anybody, being an empath, you, if you're like this, if you're on the spectrum or you're neurodivergent, you take on everyone's energy and you don't
Yes.
really know where you're getting the bad or the good energy from. And I would just take it all on and take it all on when it came to a huge sporting event, or like, you remember the things that we used to do with the university that I was with. We'd go to NASCAR, we'd go to the Super Bowl. I was at the World Series Game 6. But in a stadium of people, you're taking on that energy and you don't really know where it comes from. So really, when I say that it was it was a collision of, how do I work with this energy? How do I keep it at bay and don't let it affect my heart right away? And lastly, how do I educate myself and be in places where I have my allies? I have a very good small circle that I trust, that I run stuff off of. And I'm like my little brother's one, that we disagree about everything in this world, but he keeps me sane and grounded.
Yeah.
He's not a dreamer like I am. We're at two different ends of just about every aspect that you would ever mention. But I think that collision, when it happened, it opened up this universe where, Dawn, there is not a wrong or right answer. There are different points of view. And it's okay for you to have one point of view and for me to have another one. I don't want everybody on my boat. I don't have enough seats. But I can pull up another boat beside me. And you can ride right beside me and we can get through this together, but we don't have to agree.
I love that you said that because that is one of the biggest challenges, and this is maybe a precursor to a topic I want to talk about: society, where we're heading. We have a lot of there's disagreement, and I'm all for
Yeah.
disagreement. But subscribe to, I'm not a Buddhist, but I do subscribe to a part of the Buddhist philosophy called Mu, which is it
Yeah.
is both yes and no simultaneously. And
Right.
maybe people will relate to this graphic. There's a graphic of two people standing opposite each other, and there's the number 6. And
Yeah.
one
And then
person is yelling it's a 6, and the other person is saying, no, it's not, it's a 9. And they're yelling at each other. Whereas the reality is it can be both.
exactly.
But in corporate
Exactly.
America, in general, in society, this is hard to embrace.
Yeah. So
So,
every 3 months, I do a Tibetan monk reset. So exactly like you're saying, that kind of Buddha reset on your brain from
so
that
on
6
that
or the
note,
9.
I want to dive into there are so many things to talk about with you, by the way. You have
That's what
your
kept us going for 10 years.
you have your set of 10 commandments, which we're going to get to before the end. However, I want to touch on something. You are a minister, you do weddings, but here's the part that I want to focus on. You are trained in 42 religions and have
Yes.
never found one you fit into. Tell us about
True.
that.
And that is so true. For my doctor of ministry and my doctor of metaphysics, I had to pick a religion, and I couldn't pick. I was like, okay, give it all to me. I learned in a Christian class that I had in my it was my MBA when we had to take a religions class. I learned that just about every religion that people follow in the US comes from the same origin. It's
Which
just
is,
broke off with different people. Like with the Christianity, I mean, whether it's Catholicism, they're all the same, just
yeah,
people put themselves into categories. Religion, and people might get mad at me for this, being a minister, I've heard lots of, people are for me or against me, and I love all opinions. I don't have to read them, but I love them. When it comes to the religions, I found that people put those titles on themselves, not a higher being, not who people followed. It was just what people wanted to do and I don't want to say what they wanted to get away with in a day. It's just like, let's believe this because I want to do this. Let's believe this because I want to do this. And I don't want to say it really ticked me off, but I'm like, wait a minute, is that really a belief system if you are choosing what you want in and what you want out? And then for other people, they would put in what they want in and what they want out. And I
yeah.
actually was very upset with that point of view because your belief system should never be changed. I mean, you have your morals, your foundation, your belief system, and that should be something that stays throughout a few decades at least. We can evolve, I believe, in humanity, but I think you stay with those morals and beliefs. But I mean, I always like that thing that says if you point a finger, there's four pointing back.
Yes.
So I was like, what am I preaching? And so I went in 2011 when I became a minister to just love and light. I kept it very simple, love and light. I'm not here to judge because it's not my job. And you believe what you believe. You have your higher power. You evolve how you evolve. I evolve how I evolve. But always trying to help those people. Did you know that the highest suicide rate and the highest thing of Alcoholics Anonymous are CEOs? And you and I have lived in
Yes.
those worlds with chief learning officers, chief human resource officers, chief executive officers. I found a group and a niche that needed so much help just to keep their feet grounded and not kill themselves or not drink themselves to death. I have never liked alcohol. I don't like how it makes my stomach or head feel, but
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, wow, are you like Alcoholics Anonymous? And I'm like, no, I just don't like it. But I think there's a view on whether you like it, whether you don't, whether it's a religion, whether it's a process, whether it's the way you do something. And I think to each his own.
I
I've
agree. And
I've
I love that you
always
said that. That's my religion ultimately, to each his own. Who am I
yeah,
to judge you? However, it doesn't mean a free for all. I do have a moral code that I try to honor. I do have lines in the sand where if you violate humanity, you are
yes.
violating the law of the universe, the law of God. We're not supposed to do harm to each other. So I do draw that line.
And not even, I mean, not even like with higher being, but just governmental, we're not supposed to do this, but we are supposed to
Yes.
do that. And I think that's when I say morals and values, that's exactly what I mean, what you just explained.
Yeah. You talked
Exactly.
about CEOs, and there's a level of, I don't know if irony is the right word, that a high percentage of CEOs end up taking their lives.
Hmm.
Yet there's a high level, a very high percentage of CEOs that qualify as sociopaths because they have to
Right.
be emotionally
Exactly.
disconnected in order to make those tough decisions that are
Yeah.
purely based on finance and business rather than humanness.
Hmm.
So there's this strange dichotomy of they're emotionally disconnected, but yet they
Yeah,
suffer incredibly. You've been, in many ways, in that business corporate world for a large part of your life.
I have.
What are the challenges for you? One, as just a human being, but more specifically as a woman. And I don't want to go down the traditional path of gender roles, but society has changed. We've become a bit more understanding of feminine traits, feminine beauty, feminine power, but you navigated that journey as a woman and as a neurodivergent. What were
I
some of the
did. And
challenges?
there's, I kind of have to give you, I think when I answer this question, I wanted to give you some basis on how I have the ability or the experience to talk about this question. One of my first mentors ever was a first female executive at Hallmark. And I just wanted to point out two examples. You know, when Patty had joined there, and she's an amazing woman, many decades at Hallmark, all the guys were writing the cards, not women. It was all men. It was male dominated. And it kind of made me laugh. I mean, would you want most men to write your greeting cards? No, but they have the ability. And then the other part, when I worked for a technology company, I was the first female executive, and that was not welcomed in Malaysia or Thailand because they didn't have women in the top ranks of those countries. So I've not only worked with it, I've lived it when
Yeah.
it comes to dominance. And one thing that I found, I can either, instead of being dominated, I can outline my domination. And I think most people don't ask themselves that. When you're given domination, most people fold, or like you said, inside that zone, inside that comfort zone, we're supposed to respect our elders, we're supposed to respect other people,
Yes.
but they don't realize that you only have domination if you allow domination. I truly believe that. And so I was dominated in a few roles, but I had to climb high enough in the roles and high enough in my job so that I could dominate and I could make the rules. Because you can either follow the rules or make the rules. Just between you and me, I'm a really bad rule follower. You can ask any of my past.
You are a rebel, but
Yeah.
here's the thing. Again, creativity being one of my platforms, there is great value in shaking up the status quo. There is no evolution, there is no innovation
Yeah.
without somebody causing friction
Shaking it
and
up.
challenging, shaking it up.
And we really need that male, female, they, them energy. You need
Yes.
all types of energy to have the world go round. And I think really, a lot of people say, well, if I get into this role, I have to do it the way they told me to. No, you don't. You can make a different way, and that's part of that neurodivergence for me, energy. When I walk in a room, I feel it. I've got two choices. I can take it or I can change it. And I'm
And
going
let
to
me guess
change
which
that
one you
energy
do.
in the room
Yeah.
every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I leave the room. I know rooms that are for me and rooms that are not for me.
I've learned to embrace that sense of awareness, that sense of consciousness. I want to go
Mhm.
down your list of, actually, before I go down
Can
the
I
list of,
can I give
yes,
you something that I wrote down for us when we were talking about whether domination and things like that? I did put down three things to kind
sure,
of mention on that, if you don't mind. But
absolutely.
your business, your world, you do the dominating. That was number one. Number two is, who is your audience, and are you serving them with the dominating force that you're leading in your place of wherever you work, organization. And then lastly, like you just said, be okay with standing out and not fitting in. Those were the 3 points that I kind of wrote down, because I think people say, wait a minute, I'm standing out, get back in line, go back. And I think the team that you came to when you and I did Dee's team was very much like the Breakfast Club. We'd call us all misfits. We're a bunch of nerds and geeks and all have like ways that we don't follow the rules. But when we come together, there was brilliance.
And I remember that being one of my favorite. You talked about energy. There was
Yeah,
energy, there was synergy, there was creativity, there was freedom of expression within that
exactly.
workshop, within that training. And I was
And the
blown away.
off-site, we went off-site, so we were
Yeah.
not in that kind of university realm.
Yeah, it was a fantastic
Yeah,
experience. And it really is a reflection of the value of neurodivergent thinking
I
in
agree.
structured settings. We're moving, talking about innovation.
Mhm.
The world continually evolves, the workplace evolves, humanity evolves. We're now, the buzzword, the thing everybody's talking about is AI, obviously.
Yes,
Is that
yes. I
something
love
that,
AI.
well, then you've already answered it. Is it?
I do.
So when you
I
say
mean,
you
I
love it,
do
when you love AI, why?
because I have a bot workforce where I have 18 bots that do different parts of my business for me that I don't have to do anymore. I don't have to pay to be sourced out. Everything from receptionist work to scheduling to doing courses, things like that. I do really recommend for people. I mean, I have 25 years of cybersecurity, so I know where to go, where not to go. So a little bit, but there has to be guardrails and bumper pads. You really have to make sure that what you're, I love what a general said. I was talking to a general in the military a few months ago, and he said, you got to realize that when you use AI or you use, Gemini bot through Google or Chat GPT or any of those, that what you're getting back when you ask it questions is what everyone's put in. And it's not all smart people. The dumb ones are putting things in too. And I don't mean to call anybody dumb or stupid. Stupid was a bad word when I was younger.
Yes.
My mom had all the swear words, and then she had like stupid, dumb, we couldn't say hate. There were lots of words we couldn't say when I was growing up. But he said, you got to remember, whatever they're feeding it is what you're going to get back. And I love when people take their phone and they put a question in and they give you the answer like they've gotten 100 on the test.
Yeah.
It may not be 100 on the test. You may be getting it from a company who's wrote that theory or wrote that story for you to believe that it's this way, not that way. So I think you need to put the bumper pads on, which I call the truth, and the guardrails, which research it 4 or 5 different places. If you're going to ask one bot a question, ask it in 4 different search engines. And just make sure you're, check your work.
Yeah, and I align with that. I want to go back to a word that you used in business, dominance, connecting it to AI. So is AI now a tool for you to insert the business dominance in terms of your confidence, your knowledgeability, your awareness? Is it a tool for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is, because you can be everywhere without being there. When you set up these programs or when you set up somebody to do something for you, it works while you sleep. I set up to do 300 pages the other day. It's research that I would have had to pull myself and do for weeks on end. And it was done by the time I woke up the next day.
Well, it's
You
a
just
good
have to put
business.
the courage words in. Yeah. And when it comes to, I use a lot of plagiarism checkers, even for when I'm authoring my books. I'll copy and paste the book into AI and say, are any of these words plagiarized from any source? And it'll give me a list of what's similar.
Now, I know that you also have a hand in book publishing, and you help aspiring authors find their way
Yeah.
and find their path. One of the many things you do. I want to get into
Yeah.
your personal commandments. We're not going to go down each one of them. I've highlighted a few of my
Wonderful.
favorites. Unfriend me, no takebacks.
Yeah. No
Tell us more
takebacks.
about that.
And it happened when my oldest daughter and I were kind of having a tiff. She's 30s, I'm 50s. We looked at something completely different. She unfriended me, and I told her I would never friend her again on Facebook. We're mother-daughter. We have a very good relationship, but we're not going to be Facebook friends.
Wow. That's
Because
ruthless
I
but
just,
effective.
well, I'm kind of a ruthless mom. When my kids would call me when they were growing up in their teens, and I'd say, don't call me with a problem if you don't have a solution. So call me with 2 solutions, and then we'll work on it. I think there's some things that, and this happened, that agreement was after 3 different times of back and forth and back. I always joke that I don't want to go back and forth, and I don't want to go around the bush. Just stomp on the bush and
Yes.
let's work it out. Yeah.
One thing I have noticed about people with ADHD, they're very direct, very straight to the point. I think that simplifies life.
I agree.
I would much rather somebody tell me blatantly what they think of me, and it might hurt my feelings, but ultimately I know where I stand, I know where we stand, rather than and I'm going to sort of say the pro-American standard of sugarcoating everything, being highly diplomatic, get to the point, don't manipulate me with your
Well,
soft
when
lies.
I was looking at a study, and 98% of what people say is based on themselves, not on you. So you're never looking in a mirror. You're always looking at them looking in a mirror.
Ooh. Wow, that's deep.
Has nothing to do with us.
Wow, that's a book. That's a book right there unto itself. Quickly going back to the unfriend me, no takebacks. I talk a lot about narcissist abuse, and this is one of the big things I learned in my journey of narcissist abuse is we have to be this ruthless in order to self-preserve and in order to clearly communicate, this is my boundary. It will not be
Yeah.
violated. And here's the consequence. You are now out of my life. So it has great
Yeah.
value. Yeah, I love that.
And that's where these 10 commandments came from. As a woman in her 50s that never did the boundaries and all this talk that we've done the last 2 decades, I realized that, like you said, if you have a potato and it starts to stem on your table, it's going to keep growing unless you take care of it. Whether you throw
Yes.
it out or you use it, it's going to keep festering.
I love that. And you hold people accountable. Number three, I'm skipping number two. I'm going to number three.
Mm-hmm.
I love this one. It's very romantic. Every human has brilliance. I love that.
They really do. They really do. And it might, I try to find the brilliance before I find the quirky things
Yeah.
because being, as you know, neurodivergent or an empath, we'll talk a little bit about empath. The Empath Way is right behind you. And I love that book. When you're an empath, you're taking on that energy. And so my brain, I have to tell it, find that brilliance before you find the things that bother you. Because I would find things that bother me in every human because as you're taking on their energy, it might be mad, sad, aggressive. And I had to say, okay, Dawn, stop, find the brilliance. And then that will lead to a bridge that you can build with this person if you have to work together or if you are friending someone, something
So
like
then
that.
how do you make that decision between I see your brilliance, but you're a toxic narcissist?
I usually ask questions. So a lot of people do those affirmations. I work on an affirmation that was publicized by Noah St. John, where instead of making these aspiring, like you say, I'm so smart, but you're not smart, you're telling yourself a lie. An affirmation is when you ask yourself a question. Okay, his brilliance is that he flies a plane. Can you tell me about flying a plane? Because what happens is I ask the questions and then I can dialogue and find out if that narcissistic is in there, if there's an empath in there, if there's a person that we could work together. I know, like you, when you start being seen on a lot of different screens, a lot of people want to work with you. And I'm very careful to know the energy before I enter
Yes.
into a project.
I
I've
love that.
gotten burned a couple times, and they've
Yeah.
been very deeply burned by people that I have worked with for a long time, that I learned my lesson to where, okay, Dawn, research ahead of time, find out if you want to partner with them, identify what, like you said. And I like what you also said, because if there are those dominating or narcissistic qualities, you're never going to win. You might as well not start. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Which goes back to unfriend me, no take backs. I
Yeah.
identified you, we're done. Um, we've already talked about energy, but I want to go a little bit deeper. Your energy speaks volumes to me. So a part of my communication,
Mm-hmm.
I accentuate to people that you have said so much before you even shake my hand, before you even
Mm-hmm.
share your voice. I already have a sense of who you are purely based
Right.
on energy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go a little bit deeper. How have
So
you understood energy over the years?
when you look at the studies, so the holistic studies say that you carry energy 17 feet outside of your body. So when it comes to a being, like a human being, your energy will travel in a field 17 feet around you on every side. Have you ever been at a conference when you feel an overwhelming just doubt and then a
All the
person
time.
talks to you with so much doubt? So I used to take, this is kind of something I've never told anybody. I used to take angelic oil or orange oil or lemon oil, and I'd sprinkle it on the seats, whether I was speaking or whether I was in the audience. I'd sprinkle it on the seats beside me, because the orange oil, when people smell it, they become more positive. So before they spoke to me, they'd smell the orange oil and it would have them be
Wow.
better. So like with
Wow,
the
that's
energy,
fascinating.
yeah. So it's almost like when people say, well, you don't know me at all. And you're like, no, I feel you. Like I feel everything about you.
That is
um, but they're not neurodivergent, so they don't
yeah.
understand. But that energy, someone's bad energy or somebody's negative energy can actually stop you for 3 to 4 days. In studies,
Yes.
they've said it travels 17 feet outside the body, and it actually takes 3 to 4 days for you to rid yourself of that energy you've taken on.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, there are some people, even their destructive behavior is actually somebody they've encountered. If you're in the grocery store, you're in shopping somewhere, you're at a big concert, you can take that energy. And I kind of laugh about this now because I've worked with it for many years. I think my ministry is mostly marrying people and getting rid of bad energy. I would actually, um, I won't name names because this is kind of difficult. It is one of my children, grandchildren. But whenever I would take a picture, it would come out fuzzy. And then I'd take another picture and it was fuzzy. And so I'd bless them, or I'd bless the energy, or I'd try to make good energy around them. And then the picture would come out clear. Our camera lenses can see dark and light
Yes.
veils. And a lot of people don't realize that when they're making bad decisions, or they're negative, or they're feeling that, it's because they have something attached to them. They say energy can, from one human, can attach to another human, just like illness. We catch germs all the time, but people don't realize it's mental as well. And so mental health is so far, you get these different people that come up with these different theories, but no one said, okay, what does this human do in their DNA that's different than any other human? We don't really take it down to that level. You have people making a theory, and then you kind of take that one size fits all theory and put it to all the humans that might act a certain way, when we don't say, okay, wait a minute, this child has some bad energy around them, and that's what's making them do what they do. My mom always said there was never a bad child, there was just a bad action. And what I realized was one of mine that was acting out all the time, it was because of the negative energy. Yeah. And so a few blessings later, they acted, people say they grew up or they got older. But it's not that at all. It was the energy changed, or the energy removed, or the energy added. Because the other ways you can add energy to your home is music, certain music.
Well, the type of music will influence the energy.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because they say that there's a demonic frequency, and then there's an ethereal frequency when you're recording music, whether 400, 500, 600 gigahertz. And when I learned all the things about holistic, sound and light was a huge part of it, that I noticed with me. I'll get into a mundane routine, but then I'll turn on my favorites, and my whole attitude will change. My whole demeanor will change. Or like you said, with your Cirque du Soleil, and I'm sorry, the side of my chair is hitting this to make weird sounds. If you hear anything, it's not me, it's my chair.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
but in terms of energy,
but this leather chair is rubbing on there.
But in terms of energy, it's a talking point. It's a whole podcast unto itself. Very quickly, you mentioned how we emit this energy force field. I subscribe to the Heart Math Institute, and they've done extensive research about the energy that the heart as a frequency emits, and it goes beyond the body. And we'll go even further. The heart emits more energy, more frequency, and sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So the heart is ultimately the cradle of our consciousness. And we view the mind as this. Well, there are three minds. There's the heart mind, there's the heart mind, and there's the gut mind. But the heart is actually the most powerful. And then going one step further, there's fabrics have an energy.
Yes. Yes. So dyes. I've noticed a lot with dyes, like heavy dyes or dark colors can emit through your skin's your largest organ in your body. And we put all this stuff on it, lotions, potions, clothes, and we never realize what these dyes are doing to our brain yet.
And then the last quick thing I want to share is Terrence Howard, he's an actor, but he's also a sort of physicist, and he has redesigned the periodic table, not based on the weight of elements, but on their frequency. And he restructured, it's not his original work, but he has continued the work of another scientist. And it's quite fascinating if you look at the elements based on frequency rather than atomic weight. It's absolutely fascinating.
Have you seen that Hertz frequency where they take the 5G with the plant and they turn it on and the plant doesn't grow, but when they turn it off, it grows?
Yes.
I mean, we're just we're just plants with emotions.
Yes, and we're being killed systematically. Yes. I know it's very sad. Yeah. That's again that dilemma between technology and the human wellness aspect. Let's keep going down your 10 commandments. Be true to your soul. I translate that as being authentic, but tell us what that means for you. Be true to your soul.
Yeah, you want to make sure that your heart and soul, we let so many people hurt our soul, or we try to be like other people and we lose part of our soul.
I love
that. A study that Brene Brown did just recently, she said, longing is the opposite of, belonging is the opposite of fitting in. Fitting in is changing yourself with everyone else. Belonging is belonging who you are, how you are, and that soul intact. And I never looked at it that way, because I always tried to turn myself inside out to fit in with everybody. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can be true to my soul. And the other part that's kind of neat is so many people fall away. that aren't true,
Because they're
because
not your people. They're
your
not your tribe.
light, your vibrance, your
Yes.
soul is going to deter them, because it's going to
Yes.
actually make them mad when you are true to your soul. And then, like I said, you can be hurt or helped by other humans. You just got to realize we don't have to carry that around with us. You can let
Yeah.
that go. I don't know how many times that I'm like, somebody's like, well, can I have your phone number, or I'll connect with you? And I'm like, I'll find you. Don't worry about that. No
I'll
need.
call you. I'll
Yeah.
call you. Yeah. This one's quite important to me because it's been my journey for the last 10 years. I've been focused on finding peace. You say my peace is my preference.
Yeah. It's not up to, so if I give you the authority to take away my peace, then I'm giving you authority over me. And let's go back to that dominance. Why do we let everyone dominate us with the feelings that they have? We need to keep our peace because it's our own. It's not, I won't allow you to disrupt my peace because it's mine to own. And when you feel other humans, like we were talking about before they speak, then we can choose wisely whose energy fits into our piece and whose does not.
Yeah, I've become very conscious of that, and my life has become better for it. There's a lot more isolation that comes with it because I've
Yes.
become very selective, and also in me showing up more authentically, I've
Mhm.
alienated other people who are now like, well, that's not the Vital that I know or that I remember. No, because I'm stepping into my true
Yeah.
authentic self, and it's
But at the same time, we have so much energy to do so much on this earth. If you use it on the wrong people and the wrong things, you'll never fulfill your purpose in life each day.
yes, I love that. I love that. Final question. I'm all about society and the common good and harmony and all these beautiful utopian romantic things. Without making it political or religious, where is American society heading? Where would you like it to go? And where does it need to go? Coming from a
That's it.
empowered,
Yeah,
neurodivergent woman.
absolutely. I think right now, the world is very interesting. In a lot of things, right is wrong, wrong is right. And people don't take the time to think about it. I love to research some of the social media feeds and the scrolls. I saw like 8 people share one thing, and I'll just share it. It was the Niagara Falls turning red for 10 minutes. And after I saw so many people sharing it, I am from Western New York, so I love Niagara Falls. We used to run around and across the Canadian border and New York border when I was little. And so I was like, called a friend in Niagara Falls. Did this really happen? It did not happen, but 22 people had shared it. And I think sometimes, like, where it's heading is everybody in mass is thinking the same things when they don't say, wait a minute, I need to research that. I need to see what that's all about. And so, what I'd like more of is people to question, number one, do I need to research that? Do I need that in my life at all? Because there's some things that you can find out if you're a potato on Facebook, but is that going to do anything for your life? No.
Yeah.
But you've got people spending an hour on it. Like, it's not going to enrich your life. So I think I'd really like people to research, people to enrich their lives with different things. And then where does it need to go? It needs to go back to that. I disagree with you, but we can agree to disagree. I don't want you to believe like me because then I can't learn anything from you. You don't want me to believe exactly like you because then we'd have no, one of my favorite books is The Medici Effect by Franz Johansson. It's where they say elephants and epidemics come together. It's two totally different worlds of thought coming together to merge a brand new way of thought. And I think we can do that, but I think people get so offended or so afflicted with everyone else that they never wait and say, what do you think about that? Or how were you raised? What did your mom and dad, were you in a home with a mom and dad? I've done a lot of work with foster care. So just working in Chicago, we took a bunch of girls from the Cook County system and put them into a house so that they had a place to build their lives, age 17 to 24. And we could say those girls would all say that their life is doomed because they didn't have anything. With the right mentors, There, if you want to look up the Up House, Tangela Thornton runs it up there in Chicago. It's amazing. In Blue Island, Illinois. I helped in the beginning stages of it. But I think in a world where these kids are watching adults, I think we're very bad examples in a lot of households, a lot of communities, and states. I think we need to, as people that are old enough to, I don't know, all these fits when everybody's having a temper tantrum fit, it's like, you're 42. What is it about? Tell me the facts. Do we have a solution or do you need to give it up?
Yeah.
You just feel like I felt lately that I have to mom the whole world and I don't have to. It's not my job. And
No,
I don't think, yeah.
that's one of the big challenges of being an empath, being INFJ, being ADHD, is that we have this strong moral code that drives us to want to influence the world, but it's not our
Mhm.
responsibility or our job to fix it per se. I think all we can do is, you talked about mentors, I think all we can do is plant seeds, and those who are ready for them to blossom, they will blossom in their garden, so to speak. But it's not our job to try and fix the world. Nonetheless, I
Right.
do share my insights, my perspectives with the world for those who are willing to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, most of the time, the seeds we plant they will not grow in our lifetime. They're going to
Yeah,
grow generations from
that's right.
now. They're going to
Yeah.
grow. But if you, like in your book, pink is the color of empathy, the empath way. The thing is, when I was a young empath, I didn't understand it. And I'm like,
Yes.
I was talking to my older sister, and I'm like, why do we feel things so intently when our younger siblings, didn't? I apologize, DMJ, if you see this, but why do we feel them so much harder?
Yeah.
And it was just in our upbringing, to where the people later in the 80s, the 90s didn't have kind of that 70s where you go through anything, but you stuff it down. You don't feel nothing. You just got to, everything's okay. Just keep going. I mean, shoot, we didn't have car seats. We didn't have, we licked like paint, all that good jazz. Yeah,
Drank
and
water
maybe
from the
that's
hose.
exactly, exactly.
Had
My,
asbestos in
yeah.
the what's the word I'm looking for, in our
I
walls and
mean,
everything. Yeah.
there's a couple times that I have my grandkids, and they're like, "You let them do what?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just let them live a little bit, let them be kids. But I think if we plant those seeds, the faith, the hope, the love, but also we have to plant the hard stuff too when it comes to research and critical thinking and action orientation. There's so many things that we have to plant that people stop planting because they were sad that people would disagree with them.
Well,
They're
I
the
will
things
be
that are
honest,
missing
I
right now.
but I experienced that too. There are times when the message becomes overwhelming because of the level of resistance. I don't know what the statistic is, but for every positive comment, for every negative comment, you need like 20 to counterbalance that. And so I'll get thousands of really beautiful comments on social media, and then I'll get two or three that are really mean and hurtful and insulting, and they briefly just break my soul. I think that's kind of human nature.
Do
And
you,
again, being the
yeah.
empath, we feel that deeply because
Do,
I
do you
would
know what
never.
a
Yes,
good
go ahead.
mentor told me? And I want you to finish your thought too. But she said, Dawn, you've got haters. You've made it.
Yes,
If we
logically, I
don't
know
have the
that.
haters,
Yes,
our
yes,
content is not going to enough people because
yes.
they're going to come out by the droves. But the thing is, I think when they hate on us, it actually makes them think about what they're hating, and could that be a lesson too?
Romantically, I wish that were true. My
Well,
judgmental.
don't ruin my dream world. I think they're thinking about me. I'm living rent free in their head,
Yeah,
so it's a win.
I agree with the part they're living rent free because you have challenged them. But I'll say this without bursting your romantic utopian bubble. Some people lack the awareness to even self-evaluate, so they are so caught up in their rhetoric, aka the
Mm,
narcissist. No matter what you tell the
yeah.
narcissist, they are incapable of evaluating something from a different perspective other than theirs. But I
Yeah,
love
my
your.
daddy said you can fix everything with duct tape.
We better go and make some more duct tape then in that case. Dr. Dawn Marie Roller, it was an honor and a pleasure to spend time with you again. I remember we first connected at a workshop in Phoenix, and I've followed you since then, and I love the work you do. I love what you stand for. I love how you show up, and you're a beautiful
Right
soul.
back at you.
And thank you for spending this time with me.
Thank you so much.